Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It has been 2 weeks, and you guys know what that means. It is time for yet another patch notes review. This time we are here with patch 0.84, and I will say this right now, just straight off the bat, so that we get this taken out of the way, although I'll be repeating this a lot during this video. Very bare bones patch. Nothing too much is in here. I think if you just look through the patch notes itself, you'll find that it's very short compared to a lot of the other ones. And I'll be talking a little bit during this video in regards to why I think that's fine. But other than that, let's immediately get started into this video. And to start us off, I'm actually going to be adding one new thing into this video, and that's thanks to our beloved community members, ER Global Esports, as well as Miracles. Now this on your screen is going to be something that Miracles has been working on for the past couple of weeks. Well, technically, yeah, sure, we'll talk about that. A patch notes review overview. Patch notes overview. There we go. There is the correct word for that. And I'm going to keep this on your screen here just so you guys have a little bit of time to digest what this patch is going to have before we start going into the depths of it. While I talk about the patch in and of itself, maybe I'll start doing that in the future as well, and what I personally think about this patch before we get into it. Now, I just talked about how 0.84 is very bare bones right now, and I think that's completely fine for a patch. At the moment here in Season 9, I think the game is in a state where nothing is overly too strong. A lot of things actually do have their individual counters, and while some characters might have while have more counters than others, or less counters than others, I should say, it's not in a state where something doesn't have absolutely zero answers and there's just one character that is overly strong that no one can deal with. We're not in that day and age anymore. Nobody's really complaining about one specific character over and over again. So I think these kind of bare bones patches are pretty fine while they just look at the statistics, change the characters that desperately need them, and that should be completely fine. And that also takes away way less manpower than what in previous seasons have done, because Season 9, as I talked about before, is also the development patch, or the development season going into the official game release. So I think that's okay. Not having too many issues with the game in and of itself means that not too many major changes need to be made. And I think this patch in and of itself is going to kind of show you that these small, minute changes are completely fine, because the characters that really need them, if you take a look at it over in the statistics, are characters that are slightly struggling or just aren't really that meta. So it's much more of an incentivization for you to play it, or maybe a little bit of an incentivization for you to not try playing that character because they're way overpicked or way too strong at the moment, according to the developers. One small change here that I will let you guys know, just so you guys have the perfect clear idea of this patch. If you guys take a look at over on this right side, that's the Destiny has been adjusted and not buffed. So take this item right here, this one at the top left, and just move it down all the way at the bottom. We'll talk about this later on, so don't worry about too much, but overall, this is the accurate patch depiction. Now, I will just make a little bit of a side note here as well. I didn't make this, so I might have some slight altering differences in regards to what this shows and what I think about the patch, but this, as a whole, is a very good way to kind of get an idea of what the patch itself does contain. So good work to Miracles, and make sure you guys go support these two people, the person who runs ER Global Esports, as well as Miracles. They do great things on the community, so thank you very much. But other than that, of course, we gotta go straight into our regular scheduled programming. First, let's start off with the patch change thought processes and direction. Two things that I want to be mentioning here that is very important. First of all, changes to downstage for team modes. We're going to see a little bit of a change in regards to this. It's much more of a way to punish people for falling down, but also give them a chance to actually get picked up in team modes. So we'll talk about that in just a moment here when we go over the mechanical changes of this patch. But other than that, the two new items, Chain Nightmare and Turnout Coat, I'm going to be specifically talking about Turnout Coat, and I'll mention why I wanted to talk about this item when we go down towards the weapons and armor changes, because there is one big thing that I really like about the addition of Turnout Coat that I'll mention when we talk about it. Now, for the mechanical changes, we have two things here, technically three, I suppose, when it comes down to it. First of all, legendary item destructions. We're going to see the duration of it being reduced. So that means in the extra second that it usually would have taken you to destroy a legendary item, now you can do something else. So a good change there. Next up, the revival and the downstage. So if you don't want to read this, basically it sums up to this. If you get picked up, you have less health than you did in 0.83. Okay, so going from 50% HP going down to 35%. Now the next part, you're gonna take way less damage when you are on the down state, and your also movement speed is gonna be faster compared to before. So if you get taken down during a fight, you can get away from that fight a lot faster, but it'll take you a little bit longer to get back into the fight. So it's heavily punishing the fact that you did, as a matter of fact, fall. But if you do have a chance to get picked back up, you still have to make sure that you're healed back up, you're back at your full health, or even at a sustainable amount if you want to go back into the fight. Just because you get picked up doesn't mean you can immediately go back into the fight again. A really good adjustment here for the revival and downstate for team modes, I think, and it'll be a bit of a mess around kind of phase when we talk about it, or when the weekend comes and people are trying to play team modes in North America. We should be able to see what ends up happening with this change. Last but not least, for the mechanical changes, killing bonus in squads. If you kill something, for example, a player, you get more timer. If you kill Alpha and Omega, you get more timer, and that's good because in squads, the amount of timer you gain back really felt lackluster. So now that you actually get more timer back, it should be completely fine. Nobody should be overly pressured in final zones, even if you've been going absolutely ham throughout the course of the game. It's a good change over there. But that's going to be it for the mechanical changes, and let's go over onto the next phase of the patch notes. And of course, that next phase is going to be the augment. Very simple here, and a surprising change as well. Run it back is actually going to be getting nerfed. Now, I don't really see this augment still really being taken, which is the reason why I'm surprised that it is getting nerfed. And even if I do see it, it doesn't really seem that overwhelming. So, aside from that, we are still going to see it nerfed. Run it back is going to go from 30% to 20% for the damage taken reduction, and 5 seconds to 4 seconds for the duration. Now, run it back is an augment in the support tree. It's one of the main augments that you can run, where if you kill animals, or if you kill something, then you get damage reduction while running towards somebody and movement speed, if I remember correctly. It's something along the lines like that. So basically, you're getting less damage taken after you kill something, and then you also have it for a shorter period of time. Of course, if you kill an animal, you get a reduced amount of that effect. Not exactly sure, but there you go. That is the change that Run It Back is going to see, an overall nerf to that augment. Now then, let's talk about the characters. Of course, with the new patch, we see 3 characters getting discounted prices, and that's going to be Felix, Mai, and Sua. So if you guys were looking for these characters and you guys want to pick them up right now, go for it, because they got discounted compared to before. And during 0.85, we're going to see Elena, Aiden, and Cecilla's prices going down in May 24th when 0.85 comes out. Other than that, let's take a look at the characters. Overall, again, very bare bones patch. I only have a couple of characters that I do want to mention here. Otherwise, I'm going to just skim through them really, really quickly. Nathapon, going to get a nerf. Pretty good damage. Will get nerfed over there. The first character that I want to talk about is right here. Pretty early on here, but we'll give a second here for Nikki. Overall, if you want to summarize this, her crowd control is getting reduced. She was a character that takes very good utilization of how she rotates through her Fury bar, over her Rage bar, and when she's not in her Rage form. And she has a lot of crowd control, and she almost feels like it's overwhelming if you get caught out by a Nikki. So they're going to take that back a little bit, scale that back so there's a little bit more time for you to actually respond to the Nikki if you get caught up in her rotations by removing a little bit of her crowd control. Knockout Punch, when it's not in Rage form, the slow is going to be reduced by 10%, as well as when the Fury Jab hits, you're also going to see a nerf on that section after you finish that stun duration, which is also going to get reduced. And when you get hit by her ultimate, you're also going to be airborne in the air for a shorter period of time. I'm not sure if this necessarily changes too much about Nikki, but of course it's going to give people more time to actually react to a Nikki, and it might also force Nikki players to actually do their combos a lot faster so that they can take advantage of the fact that people aren't really going to be well equipped, because crowd control is still crowd control. You're still going to be under the effects just for a shorter period of time, which means Nikki players just have to take advantage of that time that they are given. A slight buff over onto Tia, a slight nerf over onto Leon. Again, these are very, very simple changes. Just, I guess, the statistics really call for these things, so nothing too big there. Maybe I should actually talk about about where they're getting buffed and nerfed. For Tia, it's going to be her scaling, and for Leon, his ultimate is going to do less damage based on their enemy's lost HP. So cool things there. For Rio, high win rate but a low kill rate, and that makes sense. She wants to scale. She's a turbo scaling character towards the later stages of the game that almost becomes uncontrollable when she has a couple of transition items and is way, way above everyone else in regards to that weapon mastery. But instead of lowering her armor penetration synergy, which I think is a very good thing, they're going to help out her survival power and kill opportunities that are on the lower side. And now the reason why I like this part right here is because, as I said, she's a very turbo scaling character. And what does armor penetration do over the course of the period of the game? It gets better and better and better because you're penetrating more armor, since enemies are going to have more stats to back up the fact that they're in the later stages of the game and they're also higher level than before. So I really like this change over here, and I also like the change that they're doing here as well to make sure that they're supplementing the part that needs the support instead of just kind of blatantly changing something, just saying, oh, this character is weak, let's just do this. So I really like this change over onto Rio, and for that, the defense reduction ratio per 1% crit on Hasatsu is actually going to be reduced. Of course, we just talked about that up here. But for Hanade, on the short bow W, you're going to see a lot more slow in the early stages of the game, which is completely fine because you max W last on almost all phases of Rio. Now that amplification Rio is completely gone. Let's go over onto Bianca. Her circulation, if you're charging your E, now you start losing less health every single tick that you hold that for, which is really good for Bianca players, so cool things there. A bit of a buff over onto Shukai's Q, a little bit more scaling. Sua's going to get some defense scaling buffs. Aya is going to see some pistol mastery scaling for skill amplification buffed. Isaac is going to see his ultimate damage buff quite substantially in the later stages of the game, and that makes sense. His ultimate seems very lackluster, especially if you're using it towards the later stages of the game, because you need to execute with this thing to really have a massive, massive effect with it. But it's so hard to do that, and it's really difficult to, kind of do damage when it doesn't execute with it. So just giving a little bit more power on this ultimate in the later stages of the game. He's still fine early, which is why I think nerfing it in level 1 is completely fine. A lot of chasing potential for this guy, especially in the early stages when people don't really have the tools to deal with the fact that he can chase you so much. And then just more damage towards the later stages of the game when people actually do have a way to deal with his mobility and his catch-up potential. For Yan, he's just going to see a bit of a buff over onto his Tonfa build, and while it might seem like quite a lot because you're overall seeing a 15% overall buff over onto his damage, it's not that much because Tonfa is still, when you play Tonfa for Yan, you're mixing in damage, sustain, cooldown reduction. There's a lot of things that he needs to worry about. So 15%, while it might seem like a lot on paper, I think it's a perfectly fine number to supplement the fact that he still does need to do damage on that Tonfa instead of just doing nothing, which is almost what it feels like Tonfa Yan does nowadays. It's very lackluster just from what I've seen so far. Ekion's going to see a little bit of a nerf, makes sense. All of his weapons are completely fine, very optimized routes because he doesn't need to build his weapon. This nerf makes sense. Elena's going to see a little bit of a buff, much more utility and accessibility thanks to Danse Macabre's cooldown being buffed, and her Spiral, her E, is also going to see a little bit of a buff. Nothing too biggy there. A big change here for William. Now, this is another character that I am going to be mentioning really quickly, because even if it might seem like a very simple buff, I think this is very big for William, because William is a character at the moment. We saw it during the recent changes, during the preseason, that he kind of became this steroid-style character where you have to have that fastball proc going in order for you to actually do damage and have kill potential. But the thing about that is just with fastball, most of the time you're not getting kills unless someone is just completely blindly running into you and they're letting you have those fastball stacks and hitting with them constantly throughout the course of the fight. If that's not the case, which most of the time it shouldn't, Signature Fireball is your main source of kind of lockdown potential. The slow from this ultimate is very, very important. And of course, you get those 3 baseballs that land on the ground. So I think this is a massive buff over onto William, even more so than what it just looks like on paper. The buff to the cooldown is nice, but the buff to the utilization of it is even more massive for William players that they desperately needed recently. IRM is going to see a little bit of a buff over onto her Cat W and Cat E. Ava is also going to see a little bit of a buff over onto her Amethyst Flow auto attack. For those of you guys who don't know, if you dash with Ava, your next auto attack becomes empowered. Cool. Leon, going to be seeing a massive nerve. Unplayable character now, guys. I can't believe it. You're not going to be hearing her voice lines that sounds very scratchy voices, but now you got to hear a scarier and a quieter tone. So spooky, spooky, spooky Leon is going to be. But no, I mean, okay. Cool, I guess. It's like the same thing as Carla before, where you just constantly heard her yelling stuff when, you throw out your harpoons and pull them back. Wow. Nothing too big here for Leon. For Zahir, he's going to be a little bit power adjustment. His scaling on his weapons are going to be reduced, but it's going to be put back into his skills. Eye of Azrael as well as Godiva are going to be the 2 that get supplemented, so putting a lot more emphasis on the fact that he needs transition items to deal damage in the later stages of the game, instead of just relying on the fact that you're continuously leveling up your weapon mastery to just have that extra damage. Jackie's going to see a little bit of a nerf. Jenny is going to see a pretty big nerf here. Acceptance speech is slow is going to be reduced quite substantially, 20%, and this is adding into the fact that Nimunran has been making Jenny a lot more answerable too. So just because you catch out a Jenny and you say, oh, I want to kill her, you're not going to get crowd control into oblivion, you're not going to get peeled away from her just by herself. You have answers to her now, so that's really cool. For Chloe, a nerf over onto her amplification playstyle, and her Soul Link is going to be nerfed, as Dean is going to have less movement speed when you have that ultimate proc. So this is actually a little bit surprising here. Skill amplification getting nerfed. Now, I haven't seen the ranked ladder recently to see how well this is doing, and this is probably what it's off of. But in a recent tournament for ERM, skill amplification Chloe actually didn't really do too well. So surprised on my end as a caster. Maybe, as somebody who looks at stats, because clearly I do, this makes sense. And for Soul Link, this is definitely a way for people to actually answer to the fact that Chloe has Soul Link. Nina is just super annoying to deal with when that is on. That 30% movement speed at level 3 is so obnoxious to deal with. And now it's only going to be 10, 15, and 20% at skill levels 1, 2, and 3. For Kiara, Plague, if you're sitting inside of it, you take more damage. Just a little bit of a oomph to her skill amp build. That's about it. Pretty simple there. And the buff over onto Tazia's E, her dash, as it's a little bit difficult to play Tazia, and no matter how well one circle is doing, she's still a difficult character to pull off, which is why an overall buff to this character definitely makes sense when you look at the general grand scheme of things. Theodore now is the next character, and I think the last character that I want to mention here, because he's getting another buff. Yet again, more power to this character, and here's the reason why I want to talk about this character. You take a look at a character like Theodore, and he's only been getting buffs. And now you say, well, isn't that a problem because he's going to be way, way too strong? Now, that is true, but at the problem, I think it's okay. I think I said now with the problem. There's a caveat to the fact that he's going to be extremely strong if we just continue to buff him like this. He kind of has a similar problem like Nathapon, where he has a lot of tools to do damage when people aren't on top of him. But when people are on top of him, he's very, very easy to kill. And Nimunran has to balance one of two things. Do you want him, because he's like kind of weak in a way, right? Like he's not overly strong at the moment, especially in solos, like no one plays him. Do you want to make him overly strong in regards to the damage that he deals? Or do you want to give him more utilities, which they have been doing recent times, so they've already been giving him more of that, and make him overly strong on the utilities? If you give him way too many utilities, he's going to be strong everywhere across the board, like almost no weaknesses because of all the buffs that he's been getting. He has the damage to back up the fact that, if he lands everything, you will still most likely die to this character, because that's just how Theodore works right now. He's good on cooldown rotations and all that. So I think it's way better for Nimble Neuron to give him more damage for the most part, kind of buff the utility a little bit as we go, to make sure that there are actual answers to a Theodore when you go into it or when you're dealing with a Theodore. Or if you're, if you're playing Theodore, then you actually have a weakness that other people can exploit. I think this is a good way to be buffing Theodore. We're just seeing a ton of damage buffs here. We're seeing a little bit, just a tiny bit, of utility that they've been consistently doing in recent times to make sure that he's not completely overly weak when it comes to the utility side of things. But yeah, I just like the way that they've been changing Theodore recently, and I really hope to see him a lot more because he's extremely good in team modes right now. In squads, his sustainability with energy cannon on your teammates are really nice. You do have the crowd control still from the spark nade. Of course, his ultimate is still going to be really good when you're trying to run people down or run away. He's a utility character that just needs that little bit more damage to make sure that he can actually supplement his team instead of just sitting in the back and continuously crowd controlling or just healing people. That's not what he wants to do. Going further down the list, we have Piolo. His Q1, when you're swinging that Nunchaku in front of you, it's going to do more damage. Nothing too crazy. And for Heart, she's doing pretty well, so they're going to nerf the duration of the Overdrive, which means your attack power steroid is not going to be up for that much long compared to before. Just a second nerf, not too big. And that's going to be it. Again, very simple changes when it comes to the characters. Nothing too big, nothing too major. There's a couple of things that I wanted to touch upon just because it really, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it might look absolutely massive, but it also, there's a reason behind as to why that change really came through. Alright, next up, let's start talking about the weapons and the armor. I'm going to breeze by this really quickly because there isn't really that many. There's a couple that I want to talk about, and we'll talk about them as we go. Vigor for Wonderful Tonight nerfed, but only the attack power when you get to the max stacks of that Vigor. So a little bit of a nerf again over onto Heart. Paradise Lost buff, and the nerf to AK-12. Esperiod is going to get a slight buff, and for the crossbows. Now, it said it was an adjustment over on the patch overview infographic that I showed you, but I think this is a nerf that was needed. 90% for the cone width is kind of massive. This definitely hurts the Carla players as well as the Nadim players, but this just really forces those those character players to actually use the expulsion shot in the general direction of a character instead of throwing it in the middle of nowhere and still landing because the width of it is so huge. So good change over onto crossbow. It makes a lot more sense that's the width now. 90 degrees was too big. Arcana is going to be seeing a bit of a buff over onto Hierophant. And for Pedal Torrent, yet another buff. Not that many players still use this, and it's surprising because we did actually see it in ERM. One of our Chloe players did, as a matter of fact, play it, but you still have other really good transitions. The base shurikens in and of itself for that character are still pretty fine, so we're going to see yet another buff over onto Pedal Torrent, and this in full bloom unique passive will have that cooldown buff to 1 second now. It was like 15-20 seconds when it first came out with the new identity. We're down to 1. We've come a long way, guys. Let's talk about two-handed swords. Hovid is going to see a bit of a nerf over on the critical strike damage, and our first new item for 0.84, and it's going to be Chained Nightmare. It's going to be a two-handed sword that is going to be amplification focused. Of course, you can look at the stats. It's just another one of those standard amplification scaling weapons throughout the course of the game, but in addition to that, you are going to have access to Primordial Hex. Now, my problem with this item is that the only character off the top of my head right now that can use it is going to be someone like Fiora. I mean, I guess you can use it on Amp Aiden, but that's been slightly falling out of meta recently. I don't know if it's still too viable. Chained Nightmare. Primordial Hex, you can't go wrong with it, but if you're thinking about it on the two-handed sword Fiora's perspective, that's slow from Almas. It's pretty good if you stack it up on top of literally everything that you have just to continuously land those outer ring Fenties. It really helps. So do I think this item is really necessary? I don't know. It might be much more of a preparation for characters that we're going to see when the game officially releases. Who the heck knows at that point? Is it necessary? No. Is it nice? I mean, yeah, it's a new transition. You can't really go wrong with it. So cool things there for two-handed sword amplification players that exist in the game. Further down, Sniper Rifle, just a couple of changes, some buffs and nerfs to certain weapons, and for Bow, we're going to see a nerf over onto the weapon skill, just have to wait 5 extra seconds at both ranks. It's not that big of a deal. Crimson Bow will also see a slight buff on its end as well. Now, let's keep scrolling down. Turnout code. I said I'd talk about it. Well, let's talk about it. Why is it a nice thing? Well, let's look at the stats first. 12 defense, 28% attack speed, and 100 max HP. So you look at this and it's like, wow, that looks awfully similar to Tactical Ops Helmet except for the cooldown. And that's exactly what it is. Let's go really quickly back over onto the patch change thought process and directions, and that's exactly what this is supposed to fulfill. It is a chest piece that fills the slot the same way Tactical Ops Helmet does, but as a chest piece. And now, not having cooldown makes sense, because if you put a cooldown stat on turnout code, then I think for a chest piece it's way too overstated, so I think that's completely fine. But the main reason why I want to talk about turnout code is because this sentence right here, and I think this serves as a really good kind of blueprint as to how new items should be added in that isn't a legendary as we go down the road. We hope this can offer an alternative for attack speed choices that do not require a battery. Why is this important? Well, a lot of character builds nowadays require batteries. And the main reason being is because before, batteries used to be heavily prioritized on characters that used auto attacks with, attack power, crit, and those kind of characters. But now, here in Season 9, we're seeing an overabundance of amplification characters that are now starting to go Sports Watch and Motorcycle Helmet. And the reason being is because it also fills a very small niche in regards to their damage graph, or damage chart, I guess you could say, where if you're waiting for your cooldowns to come back up, you're still dealing damage with your auto attacks. And what does a sports watch and a motorcycle helmet need? They both need motors, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure sports watch needs motors. If it doesn't, then it's something similar. It still needs a battery for it anyway, so it's fine. What does that mean? Battery is very important for characters that need attack speed. Turnout coat really shows me that Nimble Neuron is at least understanding the fact that batteries, for example, are a very important resource that, a lot of people are going to struggle finding since everyone is using it right now. And the fact that turnout code exists, it kind of shows me that Nimble Neuron wants to move away from these very heavily prioritized items and try to go for a different style of gameplay that still fills a specific niche in regards to what it wants to do, right? You have tanky stats and attack speed, which is really nice for frontlining characters like Felix in team modes. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now. I guess if you want to play frontline Fiora, I don't know. Felix is the only one that comes up at the top of my head. Thanks, Rosito. Yeah, this is just a really nice thing. You do not require a battery, which means you can probably build it really quickly. You still get the attack speed, which is really nice. You just don't have to struggle to find the items that you desperately want to find anymore from now on. Alright, let's keep moving on down. Butler Suit is going to see a bit of a power adjustment. We're actually going to see a couple of these in this patch here for items. Same thing for Tuxedo, more attack power, less lifesteal, more attack power, less Omni Siphon. And for Burgundy, it's just going to be changed as a more generalized item. You're going to see Omni Siphon instead of the lifesteal, so it's very much nicer for amplification characters that for some reason want to opt running for Burgundy, even if you don't get the amplification, you only get attack power. But for the characters who did use auto attacks, for example, like Bernice, that did like the lifesteal, you see a slight nerf on the, of course, the Omni Siphon stats. Well, no fear, no more. You still get to get the Omni Siphon sustained from your skills, so that's kind of nice. Elegant Gowns, a small buff. Queen of Hearts, a relatively decent buff. 5 amplification stats on that item. Diadem, a bit of a buff. Chinese Opera Mask is going to see that same adjustment that we just talked about. Armor Penetration this time around in exchange for Omni Siphon. Sultan's Turban, a little buff. Elysian Halo, a little bit of a buff. Auto Arms at a little bit of a buff, and Prominence, a little bit of a buff. SCV is going to be the last item that I really kind of dig deep for a second here, and the reason being is because Omni Siphon's being removed and substituted with Tenacity. So it's essentially going to be the Mavericks for amplification characters, and with this Omni Siphon being gone, I think the only character off the top of my head here that used the Omni Siphon version as a main item that you usually ran is going to be Piolo. And I don't know if he wants to build this anymore. The tenacity isn't really necessary on him. But maybe other characters that are running amplification that does want that tenacity can start using this item from now on for that additional statistic and the utility that comes alongside of it. Mithril Boots is going to see a buff. Red Shoes power adjustment, attack power in exchange for Omni Siphon, and Taproots is going to see a buff over onto its cooldown reduction. And for the accessories, Necronomicon nerf, Emerald Tablet nerf, Lunar Embrace nerf yet again, because Efflux is still good despite all the recent nerfs. And for Dice of Destiny, as I talked about in the patch notes overview, it's going to be power adjusted. Critical strike damage is going to be completely removed in exchange for more attack power on that item. Let's really quickly talk about some food and material changes because people are going to yell at me for not talking about food. Garlic bread, more healing. Grilled Chilean sea bass. I don't know if anyone still builds this anymore, but I guess there you go, 25 more healing. Mocha bread change is kind of big here. 2 to 3. So if now there's an actual reason for you to craft mocha bread over the rum raisin bread since you get more of the mocha bread more so than the rum raisin breads now. So coffee, alcohol, you get 2 coffee liqueurs. With 2 bread, you get 4 before. Now you get 6, which is an absolutely massive change. And for rum raisin bread, you just get more healing out of that item. And for materials, we're going to see white powder, which is chalk and rock, changing to chalk powder now instead. I wonder why they changed it. But that is going to be it for the items and the weapons. Well, I guess items kind of overview the entire weapons and armor pieces. But yep, a very simple patch yet again when it comes to numerical changes. Nothing too big, nothing too major. And now let's talk about the new content. Of course, we're in a new patch, which means we are going to get new content. For the first 2 skins, we're going to be seeing here Transfer Student Bianca. I was about to say Transfer Console. Sorry about that. Transfer Student Bianca, available through the free ER Pass. And Death Challenger Yan, also available on the free ER Pass. Now, if you are looking at the Battle Pass, which I'm going to go to real quick. I'm logged into mine right now. If you guys want a quick guide in regards to how the Battle Pass itself works, I believe I talk about it in the 0.82 patch video or 0.83, one of those two. Make sure you guys go check that out if you guys are slightly confused in regards to how it works. If you have been playing the game very well and keeping up with events, you probably are done with the Battle Pass now. I've been playing somewhat religiously. I'm at rank 46. I know there are people who have been at 50 for a couple days now, maybe half a week or so now too. So with this patch, which already finished, you should now be able to claim that Death Challenger Yan skin and the Transfer Bianca skin if you have already claimed them, or if you have already reached the level in which you can claim them. So congratulations to the people who finished the Battle Pass. Now we're just waiting for the rest of the events during Season 9. I guess I'll also take a quick moment here to talk about a couple of the new events that released within the time that I talked about the Eleven's Diner event and the Johan event. I'm not sure if I quickly mentioned this before, but the ER newsletter event, sign up for this if you can, because you do end up getting the Pentaswitch Tia skin for free. They'll send a code to the email you sign up with, and you just put that code straight into the game, and boom, there's a super cute Tia skin. Can't go wrong with free, I suppose, when it comes down to it. Next up, I'm going to talk about May's Nightmare Journal because it's super simple. Log into the game, boom, you're done. That's it. You don't even need to play the game. Log in, and that's all you have to do. Now, if you check into the game a couple of times throughout the course of the month, during the course of the event duration, it's free web points, free levels for your battle pass. It's just simple as that. If you sign in for 10 days, you get the Vanya skin. Woo, simple. Okay, and then the Camillo event is very similar to the Eleven's Diner event in that you have to do daily quests in order to obtain some stickers. And you get those stickers by doing these events. Make sure you go through the first stage here, and then you go to the second stage here, which continues on from the previous one, and the third stage here as well. And after you finish these specific quests, you'll get the letter sticker, you'll get the pencil sticker, and you'll get the stamp. With those, you come up here, and you get to send some fan letters. If you send it to Camillo with the stamp, he will guarantee to get it. If you send it without the stamps, there's a chance that Camillo specifically gets it. And if you scroll up a little bit further, if Camillo has, as a matter of fact, received a fan letter, then you will make progression on this spot right here. It's just more accessories for the Camillo skin that is out, and Popstar Camillo, of course, is also available with this event as well. You don't really get too much web points out of this one. I think it's going to be 60 per day because every single stage you complete of this event gives you 20. So 20 here, 20 here, 20 here. Should equal to about 60 web points a day. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. If you don't like the Camillo skin, that's fine. It's just there for you if you want to do it. So have fun with this event. It's a little bit overwhelming in my opinion because killing 9 people a day is kind of tough. But if you do, then there you go. A pretty simple event that you don't really need to worry too much about as long as you're playing the game and just doing whatever you want in there. Alright, last but not least, for new content, we're going to get new haze emotes in the game as well. So if you want these, which actually, wow, looks pretty nice, go for it as well. And that's going to be it, guys. Patch 0.84, very simple patch. And again, I explained this all during when we were talking about, when I was talking about my thoughts about the patch during the patch notes overview infographic, that it's okay. It's okay. All the circumstances that kind of lead around this stage of the game right now make sense for 0.84 to be bare bones like this, and it's going to be okay. Not too big of a meta change right now is going to be okay. The mechanical changes to team modes is pretty nice. Of course, we saw the legendary decraft things becoming a lot easier too. So overall, this game is still getting easier to play. And that's something that I heard a lot of people talking about. This game is definitely a lot easier to play. The new player experience is still not great because of matchmaking, but when it comes to the difficulty of actually learning how to play the game and actually playing the game, it's definitely a lot easier than before. There's a lot of mechanics you have to learn, of course, but that's just a new experience. When you're playing a new game, you have to learn the new mechanics. Overall, I think this patch is completely fine. You guys know I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to scoring for these patches. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, which is usually my go-to when it comes to an average, okay, beneficial patch. So yeah, that is my personal thoughts about 0.84. But of course, what really matters is what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think about patch 0.84. And in general, what you guys are thinking about Season 9 right now as a whole. Are you guys enjoying the events that are coming out, the free skins? Are you enjoying the game itself right now as well? And if you are enjoying the game, tell me, which parts about it. Are you enjoying solos? Are you enjoying the team modes a lot more? Because personally, I'm enjoying the team modes a lot more than solos at the moment in Season 9, which is definitely a good thing there as well. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Again, go support ER Global Esports because the person running this is absolutely amazing. And also go support Miracles because they are doing incredible work with these overviews as well. I want to help out with this too. This looks super cool. I've always wanted something like this for Eternal Return, and the fact that someone in the community is doing it right now, absolutely amazing. But yeah, guys, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys made it all the way to here, please give it a thumbs up. Oh my goodness, I messed up my words there. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video for 0.84 patch notes when it comes out. Surely I upload another video before that comes out as well. Surely. But yeah, thank you guys. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks for the next patch notes review. Bye-bye.